So good morning, everyone out there in internet land. This is Yvonne DeVita with Nurturing Big Ideas. And as usual, we're having such delightful weather in Binghamton. You know that's a big fat lie. We're not. It's really drizzly, and they're telling me it's going to be icy later, and it's going to be miserable tonight. And I'm glad I work at home because I don't have to go out tomorrow. But that, as everyone knows, means the dog probably won't get a walk. So she's here at my feet, just to let you all know. And if you hear her get up and leave the room in a huff, you'll know what it is. So today's guest on Smart Conversations is my good friend, Liz Solar. Liz, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
And we're going to talk about things like story and the other things that are things that Liz does that I'm really fascinated with. So before that, let me tell you about Liz. Liz Solar is a Boston-based voice actor who can be heard on commercials, interactive apps, audiobooks, and corporate narrations for regional and global brands. She has produced and participated in storytelling events and produces and hosts the Embark podcast. Her mission is to share stories. Of course, that's why she's here. Both personal and universal, to promote understanding, empathy, and a little more conversation. She coaches reluctant speakers to communicate with more confidence, power, and grace. Her signature talks include "No is not a four-letter word." Love that, Liz. I love it. She's a founder and contributor to the writer's blog, Acts of Revision, and she's completing her first novel, which I had to sneak peek at, and it's going to be so fabulous. Her home, nestled among a forest of birch trees, is in Greater Boston, where she lives with her husband and recently a band of construction workers. Well, we can talk about the construction work and things later, but Liz, tell us, I was on your site the other day and I listened to some of your voiceovers. And this is something I don't know if people understand, is that for each particular project that you're working on, you have a kind of different voice.
It's true. It's true because we're different people in life too. The way I talk to, say, a 5-year-old is not the way I talk to, a board meeting. It's two different tones. It's two different people. I'm not talking down to the 5-year-olds, but I'm having way more fun generally.
So when we think about voiceover for books, and I think about this, you and I have talked a little bit about this. Tell me how you would approach a series of novels by different authors. I mean, how do you take that and now you're a different person for each one of those, right?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Well, I will go back to one of my early teachers. His name is Pat Fraley. And one of his claim to fame was that he did a lot of animation. And one was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which my older son was fully on board with. So I heard a lot of Pat Fraley without even knowing it. But he also reads a lot of audiobooks, and he has done Huckleberry Finn and taken each character. So it's very much like it's storytelling. So storytelling is storytelling. And even when I write, I think about the first thing that comes to me generally is the voice. Mm-hmm. And from that comes a story, because it's a human being behind that voice. And every human being has a story. So with every, if it's a commercial and it's a harried mom, she's going to sound a certain way. Or the person who is, I'm not a doctor, but I'm playing one in this video. That's a whole different approach to it. So a lot of it is, sometimes I just think about different people. I landed an audition once because I was thinking of Ellen DeGeneres. And I was thinking, what would Ellen do? And I really channeled that. So the more specific, I think, and it's in every piece of storytelling, the more specificity you put into it, the more you can differentiate one character from the other.
So tell us Why? What attracted you to doing voiceovers?
Oh man, it all started in a 5,000-watt radio station. I was a journalism major in college. I decided, and at the time, it was something that not everybody did, but I did an internship at a radio station and I wrote the news stories for the next day. So I did these little headline news and then I edited tape on, old timey reel to reels. And I really loved it and, probably loved it as much for, it didn't pay anything, but I got to see all the concerts and get all the CDs and albums that, I could handle. So that, and you hung out with this kind of crazy band of nomadic people. So I got into that life of really loving broadcasting and did a bunch of things in broadcasting. And then my last full-time job, I was unceremoniously dumped and thought, okay, well, what skills do I have? And at the time I had two small children. And I thought, well, I could continue to do this in some way. I worked at other radio stations, reporting news, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, I received a phone call from a production company. They said, would you come in for an audition? There's a new mall going up. So I had two small children and someone said, hey, you could do a home studio. And this was like 2005 before everybody had a home studio.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to turn a small room into my house into a sound studio so I could work from home and be there when the young men came back from school. And that's, I got a couple of large clients to start and then I never stopped.
Well, geez. So how did you even know how to set up a home studio? I mean, who told you and said, here, this is what you need? And what do you need?
Well, I'm going to mention a wonderful colleague. His name is Jeff Berlin, and we each worked at a radio station. It's a heritage kind of top 40. It had been an urban station called KISS 108. We worked at the same place, but at different times, but we knew all the same people. And when I started, he is a production whiz as well as a terrific voice actor. So I called him up and he generously gave and enthusiastically gave about 2 hours of his time telling me what would be required, what was a good way to go. I mean, mentors and angels are everywhere in unexpected places. And he really got me very clear about what I needed to do, set expectations about, how long things could take and, where to find an engineer. And I found an engineer who helped me figure out the room because the acoustics are really important.
Wow. I mean, the real big part of that is the finding the mentor, well, first of all, recognizing that you need help. And it's one of the things that it just seems like women especially are afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, women can be really reluctant or shy or embarrassed about saying to somebody, I would really like to, level up my skills, which is a great reason to ask for help. And so many women will go out of pocket to do that private coaching, the same coaching that someone else is getting as a benefit to their job. So we really have to think about, the actions that we take or do not take have real life consequences for us. And it's to our own detriment. It's like, at least ask. You might get a no, but at least you know that you've done what you can to advocate for yourself.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that I've seen women have is they're first off, as we said, they're afraid to do the ask, but then they don't know how. So, you gather the evidence that supports what you're asking for and don't just go in and say, I'd like to do this program or something like that. I had a client who writes in her book about an experience where she went and asked to go to a women's executive conference, and she gave all the reasons why and everything, and she was ignored. They never got back to her until like the day before the conference is going to start, and they said, okay, you can go. And the tickets were sold out by then. So she had to kind of tap into her network. See, so she was a active in advocating for herself. She tapped into her network, who contacted the people at the conference, and they found space for her. But when it comes to something so unique as voiceover, and again, the challenge for me when I think about that, and knowing you and listening, you have such a wonderfully modulated voice. You know how to speak and enunciate. But if someone were thinking, gee, I'd like to do that, how would you advise them?
It comes down to, and you do this as well, find a good coach.
Yeah.
With some knowledge about the business. And one of the things that I was quite naive about, I always feel that, creatives, we just do our thing. If I wanted to do marketing, I would have gone for my MBA, so I had this mindset, which was, I think, a throwback mindset to just being a creative. But the creativity does come in the marketing as well. So the best counsel is to see how to do voiceover as a business. If you're doing it totally for fun, there are people who are looking for free work, always. And so you can practice with that. But the reality is building this as a business, brick by brick, client by client, relationship by relationship. And that is a piece that I regrettably overlooked. I think initially things just came to me. And because they came to me, I thought, this is great. But at a certain point, that well runs dry. And it's knowing how to get out there and pitch yourself as having something unique too. Because you may not be as unique as you think you are, but you have to present yourself in a certain way so people who are looking for your flavor, because clearly I'm not going to book the teen work or the young adult or the young mom, but I'll get the more mature kind of peer-to-peer, reliable expert types of jobs. So that's where I look. So part of it is know who you are. And people say you have to have a great voice. I don't believe that at all. I know people who have the squeakiest voices in town, and I would invest in their bank any day. They're doing great work, a lot of animation work. It's where do you fit into the business? Where do you see yourself? What are the things? And sometimes the things that you love to do, you're not as well suited to doing. And you either have to work really hard to do those things, or you say, well, this is where my wheelhouse is. This is where I'm comfy, where people can actually hear that talent, where there's a demand for a sound, because we can't be all things to all people.
Mm-hmm. The one thing you said really strikes me is you said some people say that you have to have a good voice, and you don't believe that, because I'm one of those people who thought you had to have a good voice. And I don't have a good voice. I don't like to hear myself. I would never consider doing voiceover of anything. But also, that's not my wheelhouse, as you said also. It's not something that I'm attracted to. However, today, and I want to talk about this especially, in the world of books, audiobooks are enormous. Audiobooks, especially with young people, they prefer to listen to books rather than read them. So I always advise my authors to think about that audiobook, and should they or should they not be the person who reads it? That's not for me to say, but I would recommend talking to someone like yourself as a professional, because sometimes you're too close to the material and you read it too fast, or you read it without remembering that the reader and the listener are the people important, not you, the author who wrote it. So if you were going to do voice, it isn't even voiceovers, it's audio books, reading audiobooks. Of course, I work in nonfiction, which is wholly different than fiction. I mean, fiction would require a whole group of skills and the different characters and whatnot. But in nonfiction, I think your voice would be great. But is that something you're attracted to? And if you were looking at doing nonfiction readings or audiobooks, what would your advice be to the cadence, the pace, the stories that are there? Because I make my authors put a lot of stories in their books.
See, and you just said something that sparked something in me. It's all storytelling, whether it's a 30-second commercial or, they have these e-learning modules, how to put together something, or here are your 401k benefits. It's all a story. And the more we can embrace, oh, this is a story, but it happens to be a story about software. And how the virtualization of technology is a lot easier to use than the actual hardware. So it could be about anything. And the key is to sound like you know what you're talking about, even when you don't, and understand I think the essence of what you're trying to get across. So even in nonfiction, and so much of it is written in a much more conversational way now, and it's written peer-to-peer. So much of the voice stuff, and the reason why voice isn't as important is because most of us want to listen to a peer. Even though we want help, we want information, but we don't want to be talked down to. We don't want to feel that somebody feels that they're so much smarter than we are. We want them to be an authority without being authoritarian. So much of what is being written now is written, like if you're reading that beach book, that book that you want to take on vacation, you want to feel like it's your friend sitting next to you in the beach chair, just telling you the story, telling about all the hijinks, the bad dates, the wondering too many. That's the essence of that character. And if it's a business person, what kind of business? If they're a graphic designer, they definitely have a different voice than perhaps, a financial planner. And so it's like, what's the integrity, the essence in your own personality that you can bring into that? I think it's more about the personality and the presentation and the performance. And then the voice. Can I listen to this voice I listen to audiobooks. They could be 13 to 16 hours. Right. Can I keep listening to that? And when it works, it's brilliant. And when it doesn't, when will this be over?
Well, you said something really important. You said it's a performance. I'm keying into that because my daughter, for a while, I don't know if she's still doing it, was teaching people how to do TED Talks. And her spiel is perceptive presence. You have to be perceptive of your presence, and then you have to understand that you're on stage. So I think that's what scares me about all of that, is I'm not a performer. And it does sound to me like, especially in fiction, for instance, if you were going to be the audio book voice for a fiction novel, would you read the novel ahead of time and practice? Or would you just read it chapter by chapter?
I think it's much better to read it to get a sense of what it is. Even when I get a script in, I read it over, I look at it. Sometimes I mark it up. What's important? What are the words, even if I don't understand it? Is there an essence to this? Is there a theme to it? So even if it's something very dry, there's always a theme to it.
In a story.
Right. And it's set up like books. It's just a matter of the format or the length. Generally in a book, it's, we start in medias res. Something bad happened. How is it going to be resolved? And the same thing happens whether it's in a commercial or in a narration, like, oh my goodness, you have all these piles of papers and you don't want to, you don't know what to do with them. Oh, well, we have a solution. We'll digitize those for you. So that's, at its simplest form. Or, I'm really tired of the same old hair color. It looks dull. Well, we have a hair color for you. So it's almost always this, there's a problem or there's a challenge. there's a journey to take, and every book, every piece. But I think you have
Yes.
to know what that is before you start, because a lot of times, and I've noticed this with books too, sometimes I'm reading the book and there are brilliant openings, but sometimes I think that opening really didn't come till chapter 3.
Uh-huh.
And how do I mentally, rev up? Because if I start with an energy in chapter 1, that it's like, well, wait a minute, we haven't gotten to a peak yet, then it will kind of sound emotionally wrong.
Yeah,
Wrong is the
it's the
best I can put it.
journey. It's the journey. That's what you said. And
Yeah.
storytelling is a journey from one place to another. And, I tell my nonfiction authors all the time that this is part of the journey, is bringing the reader along and keeping them engaged. To your point, they want the solution because they have a problem and you want to be their solution. But don't you feel that in order for that to happen, you have to make that connection with them? And in order to connect with them, you have to tell the story. The journey can start in the middle, to your point, but there's that immediate engagement, and that's where if you don't get that immediate engagement on page 1, people are less likely to go to page 2. And then there's a promise in there that you're going to reveal something.
Yes. Yeah, it's the opening line. I mean, there are people, and I have submitted my demos or an audition, people can tell within 3 seconds whether they want to take that journey with you, whether it's in a written word or a spoken word. I don't know, spoken word, maybe there's a little bit more time, maybe 8 seconds. But, you have to grab people so quickly. And I think our attention spans are, exceedingly small these days. I do think 7 or 8 seconds is the average.
Well, that's what they say. I'm not convinced that that's true, that the 7 or 8 seconds. I do believe if it's a website that is downloading, you only get a few seconds, because if it doesn't download so I can immediately see, is this the place that I'm looking for, that might matter. But, I really push back on we don't have any more attention span than a goldfish kind of thing, because if I'm looking for a solution, I have a problem and I'm looking for a solution, and I land on your website or I happen to see your book, I'm going to give that a few more seconds than 8 seconds, because I'm looking. If I'm not looking, then maybe the 8 seconds matters. If I'm just musing along and I'm at the bookstore or the library and it doesn't matter, maybe that's you only have those 8 seconds. But if I'm looking for a solution and someone said you were the answer, or I searched Google and Google said you were the answer, I'm going to spend more than 8 seconds.
All right. Well, that's very comforting to me, because I really would like people to spend more than 7 or 8 seconds with me. And that's the point of, getting back to audiobooks, is you're taking people on a journey. Are you the person that I want to accompany me in my car while you're taking that journey? And so whether, you're not going to read it, in your car, but people listen to audiobooks in their car, as they're working out. Do I want that? One of the best books I heard, and this bar is very high, was Tom Hanks reading Anne Patchett's The Dutch House.
Oh.
And Anne Patchett is a great writer, but he took something that was great and he elevated it to this point where I was hanging on his every word. I mean, it's Tom Hanks.
Well, I'm going to push back there a little, because I don't think I love Tom Hanks as an actor, but I don't know that I want to listen to him reading a book. He
was good. He was, and and the main character, the protagonist, is a male. He's a brother, so he's telling this story from, from childhood on to him being a middle-aged man. So it's a bit of a look back, but he was really, and I'm not saying, because he's Tom Hanks. I was amazed, surprised, and really delighted by the reading, because he had me hooked. And that was a lot of listening. And some people are very good. Judith Light is another one. And she had to embody a bunch of characters too. And she really she was very subtle in the way she did it. But she's such a great actor anyway. And there are people that we've never heard of that do great audiobooks. I did a bunch of work, probably 10 or 15 years ago for the Library of Congress, audiobooks for the blind.
Oh my goodness.
And that was one of the most satisfying experiences because I read everything from, young adult or middle school literature to, some of the classics like F. Scott Fitzgerald short stories.
Wow.
So, and self-help books, business books. It was a really great experience. And because of the way they did the work, it really was reading it, okay, you're sitting in the chair, here's the book, this is what you're reading today. So it was, kind of a grab and go situation, which is not my favorite, but it worked for what it was.
And so when we're talking about audiobooks or really any other kind of, let's say the voiceover that you're doing in your home studio, what kind of things do you need? I'm assuming you need a really good microphone.
You do, and I have a few. Because there's some I like, I have one that's, it's called a shotgun because you can actually take it out into the field in different places. And it's so focused that the sound is pretty good. I also have something, it's a Neumann NPR that they use, a big important one. I kind of the, everyday downsized one, but it really works. And I have a couple of USBs that I use in case I'm someplace and just need to do a quick audition. So there's all kinds of things, but you really, writers, and I know ACX because I've dealt with them as a producer from time to time, they're pretty strict on what they need in terms of audio. And I worked with an engineer and they kept sending the audio back to him. And he said, I don't understand this. He's a great sound designer. And I don't know what algorithm they use, but they were not having what he kept sending them. It took about 4 or 5 times before they accepted it. So you need a really good, not just a quiet environment, but it needs to be acoustically treated because rooms have, a presence and a noise, and we try to deaden that space as much as possible so that all we're hearing are those words coming out and not the surrounding ambience of the room. And that's a science in itself. That is not my forte, but I will tell you something right now, as I'm having a studio built in my basement, I'm using a walk-in closet.
Oh,
and truly, there's not one person who's come back and said, this sounds weird. This doesn't sound right, because what happens is clothing provides natural insulation. So, and they're of all different sizes and lengths. So different pieces of cloth are sticking out. So a few well-placed sweaters and slacks will really do the trick as much as anything else.
Yeah, how interesting. Well, we're coming to the end of our time, but I did also want to talk about book trailers.
Yes.
I know that many authors want to read their own book to make an audiobook, and that's, again, discussion between them and their producer or whomever. But book trailers are another story. Book trailers, I really have seen the power of having a series of book trailers. So in other words, if your book is coming out in October of this year, you should start creating a few book trailers as lead-ins right now, talking about the book. And in a book trailer, voiceover is also important, because I think it's just like in a movie trailer. You see clips of the actors, so the author can read something from the book if they like, but the actual book trailer has to be that 1 to 2 minute why you should buy this book, right?
Absolutely. And I will even say I think you can impart so much information in 30 to 60 seconds.
Yeah.
Because we're trying to we just want to tease them. We want to hook them. It's, if you watch television and, coming up next on Friends, right?
Exactly.
Okay. It's like the same old, like 25-year-old, episode, and they have to find ways to engage a new audience or re-engage you if you've seen that episode, 700 times.
Mhm.
So they're just giving you a bit. It's a log line, essentially.
Mhm.
When a girl ditches her boyfriend at the altar, and runs into an old friend, she goes on a new adventure working as a barista.
Mhm.
So that's what we're trying to do. Is like, what are the buzzwords? What am I looking for? Whether I want, what's my entertainment adventure, or what's my information? Like, oh yeah, I am starting a business, and this book is going to unlock the key to do that successfully. I just want to give a little taste of that. And then I think as you go on, you can start to reveal different parts of your master plan to get your book out.
Right, right. And so in the voiceover part could be so enormously important, and really actually is enormously important, because I think that by providing a book trailer of, as you said, even 1 minute, it's amazing how much content you can fit into 1 minute. Sometimes I'm just astounded by commercials that are 1 minute long, and I'm like, wow, they really put a lot in that. But using a voiceover professional, to me, makes the trailer and the book and everything else more professional. And I'm not against, as you know, I work with indie authors. My authors are published on KDP Kindle, and that's self-publishing. But when it comes to marketing and promotion, I really advise them to start looking at some professionals, because you want this to be the most stellar product. And that book trailer, having the voiceover of a professional, where the author may read a clip or two or show something else relevant to the whole story of the book, it just makes the person watching that much more likely to feel like the author took the time, the energy, and the investment to make this good enough for me.
Right. It makes you look bigger. And, like with anything else, I don't cut my own hair.
Right.
I don't remove my own organs. If I need surgery, I'm going to go to somebody who's done it a few times. So I think sometimes we feel like we have a greater skill set, or, oh, this doesn't matter. But more and more, audio and video are becoming what drives us. We're sitting in our homes. I mean, we're in different parts of the country, and we're connecting like this.
Mhm.
And now we're posting this someplace, and people are engaging with this. So more and more, if you have something to say, put it in an audio or video. Plus, writers, I think, like many other creatives, are reticent about promoting themselves.
Yes.
It feels dirty, it feels braggy and all that. It's like, okay, well, you could be excellent, but no one's going to know about it unless you tell them.
Yeah.
And the only way you can tell them, most don't have, many writers I know don't have a platform. They're not even on social media. They don't even send out an email.
Right.
So how do you expect people to find you? That's the 1 in a million story. Oh, they came out of nowhere and their book was a success, or whatever was a success. We only hear that success because it's so rare.
And it's not true. Oh, it's not true. I've been doing this for a long time, Liz, and nobody's book was an overnight success any more than actors and actresses and people in the movies are an overnight success. They were doing auditions, and they were waiting tables, and they were trying to break into the business for 10 years or whatever it is. And so there's nothing overnight success about writing a book and getting it in front of people. And the truth of the matter is, if you are if you want a traditional publisher and you get one, and they love your book and the editor loves your book so much, they may help turn it into a bestseller. But 99.9% of the time, they're going to be saying, hey, you better market this book and sell it, because it's not going to a second printing. So with indie books, you don't have to worry about that, but you do have to worry about marketing it.
Right. And that's the funny thing about writing a book. It could take years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're not being paid for that time. No one is giving you an advance to write your book, especially if you're an unknown author, writer.
Mm-hmm.
So you put years of sweat equity and time and hours into all of this. And at the end, you say, well, wait a minute, it's not worth spending a little extra money to promote it. It's like, well, you just spent the last 6 years of your life writing this thing.
Right. And the energy and the effort and the talent that goes into it. I hear you, what you said earlier. We so often believe that it's not authentic if it doesn't stand on its own. Well, in some ways, that's true. It's not authentic if you didn't put the time, effort, and hire an editor and hire a book designer and hire all these other people to make it really stellar, just as it would happen if you did it, had been accepted by a traditional publisher. But then you think, okay, now I'm done with that. It should stand on its own. I put it up on Amazon and people are going to find it and they're going to buy it. And it goes back to the 15 years ago when people thought if I build a website, people will come and find my products and buy them. And guess what? That doesn't happen.
No, got to call them in. We have to invite them in.
Yep. You got to invite them in. You got to talk to them. You got to stand on your soapbox and get out your megaphone. And you got to say, hey, look at me. Look what I did. And you're going to love it. And here's why. Well, we're at the end of our show, but boy, this was really eye-opening as far as voiceovers and some book trailer talk and audiobooks and all of that, because I wonder how many people, apart from books, just in general, could use a voiceover actress such as yourself to do some small promotional videos for them, so that they don't have to feel uncomfortable trying, like, because people are so uncomfortable doing videos or uncomfortable speaking even in front of, I've had people say, well, I do want to be on your show, but I'm afraid. It's just a little podcast. It's just two people talking, but I'm afraid. People need in general to start thinking about that promotional aspect of their business and maybe engaging with someone like you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Yvonne. And they said, well, we don't know, you have soft skills, meaning communication skills.
Mm-hmm.
And now the communication skills are at the top of the pyramid. You can see how a lack of communication has hurt us on all levels, societally. Yeah. So it's more important than ever to be able to get out and speak to people and feel like nobody cares if you're polished. They care that you're real and that you're impassioned about what you have to share.
Right. The days are gone when you have to be polished. However, it does help to work with someone like yourself. And I do some of this also to build the confidence level, to be able to go out and use your voice, the voice that you have, and promote yourself. So, Liz, this has been really fantastic having you on and talking about, because these are the things I'm really passionate about also. And by the way, I want to take just a minute before we sign off for you to tell us a little bit about your novel.
Oh, well, it's about a really traumatized widow who is obsessed with Georgia O'Keeffe,
mm-hmm.
and will stop at nothing to obtain a piece of her estate, endangering both herself and her young child.
Yes. I've read a little bit of it, folks, and the parts that I read, it was like, where's the rest of the book? Because this is one I want to take and curl up in my chair with and get my tea out and just spend the afternoon with. So you will be letting us know more about that book, and I will be sharing. So where can people find you, Liz?
They can go to lizsolar.com, and it's SOLAR. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, on Twitter, Instagram. I'm at Beach House Voiceover because I love the ocean. And there's a lot of information. I have a podcast as well called Embark, which is coming up with you next week.
Oh my gosh.
So,
I'm
oh,
so
I
excited
know.
about that.
I know. So, things are happening. I'm getting very excited about this time of year. I feel like things start to emerge, and this past year has been incredible. I met you, and that's been one of the highlights of not just my year, but of my life. These conversations are incredible, and I look forward to more of them. This is just really fun, Yvonne.
Yes, we're going to do more. We're going to do more because honestly, we're both in the business to help people succeed. And
Yes.
the way that we like to do that is by helping them tell their story. And I help them write it, and you can help them tell it. And it's there's such a big need for it today. And so many people who think they don't have a story, well, they do. And we want them to start thinking about that, because just talking to you, they would probably uncover some amazing stories that they could tell. And when I say tell, I mean speak the way we are, not always in writing. So Liz, I can't wait. We'll do this again. Absolutely, especially when your book, closer to when your book is coming out, and anything that, let me tell you folks, get over to lizsolar.com. Check it out. It's a really well put together website, by the way. And I say that from having looked at a lot of websites, especially with my authors. And check out some of the things that Liz has done, because you're going to be really amazed. And at this point, we do have to sign off. We really went over, but we were talking about some important stuff, and it really is necessary. So Liz, I will see you on LinkedIn.
Yes, you will, Yvonne. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Pleasure.